All right, it looks like we've got a quorum, so let's get it started. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for Enhance Your Security Game, why it's time to move from SecureZIP to PK Protect. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. As always, if you have any questions, please add them into the chat. We'll try and filter those over to Ben as quickly as possible. And if we can't get to them on the webinar, we'll certainly reach out after. So with that, I want to introduce Ben Myers, PKWARE's VP of Cybersecurity Solutions Delivery. With that, Ben, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks everyone for joining. So like Sarah said, I'm the VP of Cybersecurity Solutions Delivery. That really just means I kind of handle a lot of our implementations, and one of those implementations is SecureZIP and the SecureZIP to PK Protect transition. So today, I really just want to talk about what PK Protect is, what are the capabilities and benefits of that, why that's important for people who are currently utilizing SecureZIP, do some use case analysis between those two products to give you a good insight into what SecureZIP offers and offered, and what is comparable and or the new features that are available in PK Protect. And then I'll give you a little bit of insight into some of the highlights, i.e. some of the reporting exports that you can get out of PK Protect that really help drive some of your compliance maybe needs with that product, okay? And like Sarah said, if there are any questions, just put those in the chat. Sarah will be monitoring that. I'm sure she will stop me if needed. So, all right, so to kind of start, I want to talk a little bit more about just the data landscape today, because whether you're using SecureZIP or PK Protect or a like product, right? The goal typically that you're looking to get out of those products is securing your data, right? And why we secure our data is, to be good data stewards, but also compliance regulations, right? There's ever increasing risks to your data and bad actors out there who are looking at ways of, exfiltrating that data. I think I looked up some stats this morning, and like last year there was about a 33% increase in just ransomware attacks, and just in the U.S., there was victims lost around about $16.5 billion. And the reason for that is really think about data, right? Data today is the most valuable item that most companies work with, right? Data drives AI. Data, drives and has all your intellectual property in it. Your workflow is what makes your business unique, right? In addition to that, we're always gathering data from our customers, our vendors, and the regulation pressure to maintain that data in a sensitive, in a I'll say a good data steward way, i.e. encrypting that, protecting that in some way is ever increasing. So PCI, HIPAA, GLBA, these are just common, regulatory compliance structures that are out there, and there's hundreds of these out there. I'm sure some of you on the call are aware of this, right? And it's a the last kind of bullet point kind of brings that home, right? There's fatigue in it. There's compliance gaps. You're, as a owner of maybe that data, I feel like there's this constant pressure and anxiety of, did I do everything we should? Is it protected in the right way? The other, kind of big thing in when you think about compliance, right, or audits or anything along those lines, right? It's really about how do we get our workflows automated, right? SecureZIP is very manual today, right? It was kind of developed more so for the end user, and in the last 10, 15 years, that's really flipped, right? Where we now are really focusing on how do we automatically apply these policies? How do we not rely on end users, right? And again, you have to kind of partner with teams that have that built into their software, right? And then the last thing that I think is really, really important about when you just think about your data landscape, right? Data can be everywhere. It can be endpoints. It can be on, multiple different operating systems. It can be on premise, it can be in the cloud, it can be in databases, it can be in data lakes. It's ever expanding. And so it's very tough to manage or know if you are being a good data steward if you lack that visibility. So it's critical in today's data landscape to be able to have some central visibility into your data, and then not only that, but how is your data protected, right? Is it protected? Are there issues? Are you, are there areas or gaps? If you don't know that, it's very hard then to tackle some of those risks throughout the organization. Okay. So really briefly, in next couple of slides, I break this chart down into kind of two sections so you can kind of see it a little better. But in general, if you compare SecureZIP to PEM, right, the good thing is PK Protect was built off of SecureZIP. It was the core functionality of it, which means that all the current functionality in SecureZIP is in PK Protect, plus a lot of additional benefits. Okay, so I think that hopefully eases some concern that a lot of people hear when you talk about moving from one platform or one piece of software to another software platform is there going to be a lot of work involved to move over? And the answer is no. We'll talk about that a little later. But the big thing it gets you from just a pure encryption standpoint is centralized control. All right. So we allow you now in the PK Protect platform to set policy from a central admin console. Administrators can go in, set what type of policies you want from your encryption, what algorithms should be allowed to be used. In addition to that, you can set automated policies. So those policies can look like, in these locations, I want to encrypt any file that's dropped in there, right? The other thing that is just important to consider is this is very scalable. All right, so we've partnered with a lot of large enterprises, and we've advanced, I'll say our coverage. Right, we're no longer, I'll say just a on-premise, end user, endpoint or device company. Right, PK Protect broadly expands the capabilities of our encryption and additional features, but it broadly expands that to, different data repositories. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, 20 years ago, data was on servers and file shares on premise, right? It is completely transformed now into, cloud and hybrid, and maybe some data is still on-prem. So partnering with an organization that can cover that entire spectrum is extremely critical. Okay. So just kind of diving into these a little bit further. Okay, so SecureZIP and PK Protect, it's still going to offer you that encryption, the compression. It's still going to offer you that cross-platform operability and the flexibility. In terms of using certificate-based encryption. That's typically used in SecureZIP or PG or OpenPGP. It gives you all those same things. Now, the big change, though, and advantage when you just look at the encryption platform, I typically call these the three big changes, right? So the first one is it gives you the ability as an administrator to control your policy, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier. So if you think about, hey, I'm going to point this at a file share, and I have maybe our board meeting minutes or our board documents, or maybe it's your intellectual property, right? You can set a policy from an admin, from the administrator console, and just say, hey, anything that's dropped in here, I'm going to encrypt. I don't care what's in those files. I know it's sensitive. So all of that can be centrally managed. All right. The second big thing that PK Protect offers is a brand new way of key management. Right. So if you think about SecureZIP, right, there's still a need from a customer level to maintain your private and public key infrastructures, right? So if you're using, certificates, you have to renew those. You have to make sure, that certificate or the right certificate is available on everyone's endpoint if you're going to decrypt information. With PK Protect, there's a brand new technology that we call smart keys. All right, smart keys are encryption keys wrapped with access control. So what that means is PK Protect manages and controls all of that PKI, meaning we handle moving those keys down to the right agents, right? If the agent maybe isn't authenticated for a while, we're going to actually pull that key back. So we handle all of that PKI. So from a customer standpoint, we still support certificate based or PGP or those other methods that SecureZIP supports because we don't want to have any breaking changes when you convert over to PK Protect. So that's still there, but we offer this brand new way of managing your keys through smart keys, and it's really smooth and slick. And the long term, what we kind of see from customers is it may take a little bit of time, but after a while, the PK Protect key management really becomes their PKI, right? All those the old certificate encryption and all of that type of stuff is really removed and replaced with the smart key functionality, which again, it reduces not only the cost of maybe buying those certificates, but it's the maintaining of that PKI, as well as just the automation that it provides from a key management standpoint. So again, very slick there. Couple of other things which are maybe a little bit outside of just the pure SecureZIP to PK Protect, right? So we kind of focus on the encryption portion so far. I'm going to talk about some of the additional functionality that PK Protect offers beyond just the encryption and administrator control. So with PK Protect, we now offer the ability to do data discovery. So what is data discovery if you don't know it, right? So let's just think of an example again, right? So let's say we're looking at, a SharePoint site, right? And, we want to see, okay, if it has, PCI data, then I want to encrypt it. If it doesn't, I don't want to do anything with that file. Data discovery allows us to really open the file, look at the content of it, for sensitive patterns, right? And then also allows you to specify what we call the remediation. So how do you want to protect that? So encryption is one of those options, but we also allow you to do, masking or redaction. So what that functionality would be is, again, let's say there's a file in SharePoint that, is a credit card. Well, you can set up a redaction that says, well, we shouldn't have an open text credit card number sitting in SharePoint. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take we're only going to leave like the last four characters, right? So we're all kind of familiar with that, right? You get your credit card statement, it might show your last four digits of your credit card number, right? So that's what redaction and masking is. We're able to pinpoint where that sensitive data is and then reformat it in a way that does not make it sensitive, all right? We also allow you to do some quarantining and deletion. So maybe, you have a policy, for example, that says, hey, we're not allowing anyone to download files anymore. Well, as soon as files hit maybe your downloads folder, we can delete those automatically, or we can move those to a sensitive quarantine location. All right. Another big functionality that you're going to see in the middle is data classification. So classification is a very good kind of what I always claim is a good like first step, right? We want to report and classify our data in a particular way so we know, where maybe our sensitive data is. But so we allow you to do that, right? We can use our data discovery to detect what the sensitive data is and then apply a classification, maybe, highly sensitive or highly confidential. Maybe this one is public internal because it's not sensitive. That tag is really important when you look at across your entire, I'll say just your security posture around data, right? Which means it allows you to utilize other tools maybe more effectively. One of those big things is DLP. So we even integrate with Microsoft Purview to apply sensitivity labels, but the tagging and classification really is, kind of a first step that allows you then from maybe a DLP standpoint to protect data from moving out, egress, okay? Um, and then the last thing I'll kind of say is just comprehensive reporting, right? So when we talk about PK Protect, One of the huge advantages, just from an encryption standpoint, moving from SecureZIP to PK Protect, is you get auditability about everything that's happening with encryption, right? And the same is true for, discovery or any of these other remediations. So what happens is anytime that we take action on a file, we're going to encrypt it, we discover it, we're just going to report back those findings, or we redact it. We are reporting back those events back to the central admin console. So from an administrator, you get audit ability of every action that's being that's happening to your data with our software. A huge advantage from where SecureZip sits. There's no real reporting that comes back. And a lot of things that we heard over, I'll say 5, 10 years, right, is I don't know really who's using it and who's not, right? That answer is 100% not or that question is answered with PK Protect, right? So all of that reporting is really pivotal for you to understand what your data looks like, right? So again, if you're looking at all of the sprawl of the data that's out there, it's extremely important for you to be able to pinpoint where your sensitive data is, what data has been scanned, what data hasn't been, what percentage is protected. Because when you come back to compliance, that's what you're going to need, right? When you try to pass a compliance or an audit, that's what you need to provide. You need to be able to provide that in-depth analysis, the audit information, the policies. All of that is what kind of PK Protect provides you from a software side of things. So, all right. So when you think about, why upgrade to PK Protect, right? We talked about a lot of those advantages, but I'll kind of break those down into maybe a little bit more of like true use cases, right? So we just talked about this, but centralized visibility. Having that visibility into your data is pivotal to managing your data across the organization, right? Data isn't going to get smaller, it's only going to continue to expand, right? And so if you're not able to report and manage and monitor, where, what data is sensitive, where it's located, what who has access to it, or who's looking at that, who's attempting to get access to that data. You're kind of leaving your organization if you can't do that in the, I'll say, the dark ages, right? You need that type of central visibility to understand truly what's happening with your data. And again, PK Protect allows you to do that. Okay. Um, Automated encryption. So we talked about this a little bit, but one of the huge advantages of PK Protect is we can point our agent at particular locations and encrypt automatically. So there is no more manual steps of, right click a file, secure zip, encrypt it. Okay, do you want to do this with a passphrase, or what certificate do you want to do? Again, as an admin, you can control that encryption automatically. Now, yes, we still allow end users to manually encrypt particular files. Like I said earlier, we didn't want to have any breaking changes there. But again, as an admin, you can control that through policy. Do you want them to be able to manually encrypt? If you don't, you can eliminate that through policy. But the automated encryption is really pivotal, right? We not only can do a kind of a one-time pass of encryption, but we monitor those locations for any time a file changes or a new file's dropped. So within seconds, we're able to actually look at those files and encrypt them if needed. Okay. Again, policy enforcement. When you think about compliance, start thinking about, you know, when you answer some of your audit questions, really start thinking about, is this automated or is this manual, right? We, as a good data steward, your goal needs to be to try to get as much of that to an automated stance, right? So again, anything that's manual when we're looking at audit and compliance, we want to get that to an automated policy enforcement, and that's what PK Protect allows you to do. Okay. And then audit readiness, right? A number of our customers utilizing PK Protect use that to pass audits. we wouldn't be talking about that in this webinar if that weren't true. We've helped many customers pass, PCI, TISAX, HIPAA audits. And again, the nature of those audits is typically talking about, how do you know where this type of data is and what are you doing to protect that, right? That is the core to what PKWARE allows and what PK Protect truly does from an automation and audit readiness stance. Okay. All right. So when we talk about, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of a insight into some of that reporting, right? So when we talk about built-in regulatory support and that central reporting, I mean, this is an example of what we're talking about, right? So we have a number of pre-configured templates, and those templates aren't just reports. It's the policies, what sensitive types are we looking for, what should we do if we find those sensitive types. But all of that again comes back to really in-depth reporting here. So just as an example, when you look at this is a type of dashboard you can expect. What's sensitive, what's not. Of maybe the files that we scanned, how many were sensitive? If they were sensitive, did we do any protections? What were those protections? What patterns did we find? Over time, are we starting to see any increase in terms of sensitive data, right? All of those points are critical for you to, monitor and also just enforce, rules, right? If you start to see, for example, an increase in sensitive files being detected in SharePoint, that's probably an indication that you don't have a good enough SharePoint, policy about what sensitive data can get moved in there, right? Um, so this is just a snapshot. There's a lot more in terms of what we can get from our data. But again, all of this information helps you be a better data steward, but drive the audit and compliance needs. All right. Just to give you an idea of some of the institutions that we work with, Truist, First Citizens, Pfizer, Visa, Fifth Third Bank, PNC Bank. We don't necessarily say these to impress you in terms of, hey, we work with some large enterprise customers. Why we show you this though is when you think about compliance, some of these institutions and customers of ours, I mean, they are running some of the most stringent compliance regulations in the world. Okay. And we've been working with them for a number of years, but they also picked PKWare because we've been able to help them along those compliance, needs. Okay. So again, we work with small, medium, large, but a lot of times, these customers, I'll just say we've been through the gamut, right? We've been around for 40 years. We've worked with customers. We understand the regulations. We understand the nuances of data and how data, maybe looks at some of these large organizations, and all of that comes back to just saying, we've done this before. Okay, so you're worried about moving, you shouldn't be. Like we've done this before with a lot of large customers who've helped us really fine tune those processes. Okay. All right, and then last slide, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. So what does it really look like to upgrade? Okay. You can kind of read through some of the upgrade process and whatnot, but the keys that I want you to really take away here is it's seamless. All right. SecureZIP is built, or PK Protect is built on top of SecureZIP. So all the same functionality exists. We strive for no disruptions to existing workflows, i.e., as soon as you deploy the PK Protect agent over SecureZIP, everything that used to work will continue to work. All right. The other thing I'll say is we have a number of PKWARE experts. I lead a team of experts who've done this type of migration several times. We have a whole support staff that's there to help with the rollout to ensure that there are no hurdles or hiccups in this implementation. Okay. So again, fairly smooth, fairly quick, or very smooth, fairly quick in terms of migration from SecureZIP to PK Protect. Plus, just remember all of those additional benefits that you could start looking at, right? I think The last thing I'll kind of say with that is, a lot of our customers who've moved to PK Protect, one of the big things that they've come back, I think, and talked to us is, how much we've been actually able to eliminate another vendor. All right, because the functionality that you may not even be aware of in PK Protect, you may have another vendor that's out there doing similar things. And again, let's centralize that. Let's, let us kind of prove ourselves to you and show you, the full breadth of what PKWARE has been doing over the last several years. Right.
All right, thanks, Ben. It looks like we have one question so far, but if anyone has any other questions, please add them into the Q&A section, and we'll make sure to cover off on those. But the one question that came through, it says, how does PK Protect help organizations modernize their data protection strategy compared to a more traditional security strategy? Things like access management or DLP. What makes you different?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So PKWare really focuses on the data. All right. When we talk about it, if you go to our website, I mean, we always talk about being data centric. Okay. And the reason for that is, DLP, access control, those are all good steps, right, in your security posture. However, um, if you read any of the, compliance or cybersecurity frameworks, they always are, the idea is to assume you're going to get breached, right? Assume someone's going to get into your network. And the only true way of protecting against that type of leak is to have protections at the data level, right? So our encryption, for example, if you encrypt a file, you get ransomed and someone pulls that off, it's not usable to those ransomware attackers, right? And so all of our protections and our discovery is really to help you understand at the data level, what's at risk, and then again utilize our software to help you protect that. That way, again, with the assumption that you're going to get infiltrated, there's going to be a bad actor that comes in, you can at least have some sense of security knowing that, PKWare is protecting you at that data level, not just at that network or DLP level.
So if anyone has any questions or are ready to upgrade, please let us know and we'll be happy to get that started for you. Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you everyone for joining.